Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I am excited to be chatting with, I think I'd call her a pioneer. See if you agree. So my guest today is Georgia Leininger. And let me tell you about Georgia. She earned her master's in journalism with the focus on environmental magazines from University of Oregon. I didn't even know there was such a degree. Her master's thesis was on the history and environmental impacts of paper in the industries of newspapers, magazines, and books. As an author, Georgia's first children's book was published by a hybrid publishing house. Her next book was self-published. Frustratingly, neither of those options allowed for printing on recycled or tree-free papers. As she attended more and more writing conferences, seminars, and increased her involvement in writing communities, she met with many people who had tried for years to get a seat at the table of traditional publishing. She found that it was disheartening for many incredible voices. So Georgia decided to build her own table. She is the founder and editor-in-chief of Salus Publishing LLC, a book publishing house focused on publishing high-quality books by diverse authors and illustrators in a variety of genres as sustainably as possible. Salus books, shipping, and promotional materials are printed on 100% recycled or tree-free papers. She lives with her family on a small farm in Northern California. So today we are going to talk about this sustainable book publishing. Please join me in welcoming my guest, Georgia Leininger. Georgia,
thank you so much.
So happy to have you. And this is just a wonderful thing because, as you said, I never really thought about the fact that a publisher wouldn't try to do this. It seems like it makes so much sense to stop chopping down trees for it. So let's first start with some easy questions before we talk about sustainable book publishing. First question is, where do you live? Where do you call home? I gave a little bit of away, but there is North California is not a small area. So what part of Northern California?
We live up in the foothills northeast of Sacramento. So yeah,
nice.
It's beautiful. Yeah, it's hot these days, of course, in the summertime, but and in the fall too now. But yeah, it's gorgeous. We have a little farm. We have goats and chickens and dogs and cats, and yeah,
nice.
We have fun. Yeah.
I know whenever I was going out that way, you're not that far away from strawberry country, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And isn't there rice fields in that part of California as well? Which totally surprised me. It's like you think rice from China, but no, we have rice growing right in California.
Yeah, California is actually one of the major rice growers in the world. It's because of our delta. And originally California, way back when, was predominantly wetlands. And so
Mm-hmm.
wetlands are, of course, fantastic for rice. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So let's get into this next question. It is one that in the bio, I always really focus on your accolades and kind of where you are today. But we know that the journey that got you to where you are today is often as interesting as the present. So talk to us about really a little bit more about this journey that led you to being tied to this purpose and this vision of having sustainable books and publishing.
So I think it's kind of one of those, I think like many writers, I just started off loving reading and loving stories and storytelling. And so, when you pursue, English literature and classics like I did in Spanish in college, and then I thought, okay, journalism. And so the University of Oregon actually has their Masters of Journalism in Magazine. You can focus there. And then my real focus was the environmental aspect of it. Originally I wanted to be a freelancer for like National Geographic and Nature and all of that kind of stuff. And it was through the process of researching my thesis, which, as you mentioned, was on the history of paper, where you really get into, first, for the fact that paper made from trees is actually an incredibly inefficient way to make paper. When you look
Yeah.
at the history of paper throughout human history, for thousands of years, it had nothing to do with trees. And it's, trees really didn't come about as the main paper source until 1500s, late 1500s really kind of started taking off. And that was with, the European, discovery of the New World and all of these incredible forests. And so,
Mhm.
hey, we have all these trees and they're free, so let's chop them down. But it was, the more research I did on the thesis, it was really kind of looking at, you kind of, I think sometimes what drives us is when we get passionate about something and when we kind of realize, wait a minute, that's not right. Like that's not
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
And so it was the more research I did on kind of publishing and the publishing practices, which we'll get into, the more I was just kind of driven to try to do something a different way. And so I wrote my first book for my son when I was pregnant with him. And yep, and just like you said in the bio, it was I really wanted to try to do it, as environmentally friendly as possible. And I
Yeah.
could not find a publisher out there. Maybe they exist. I just couldn't find them at the time. And I ended up going with a hybrid and asking them, hey, what about recycled paper? What about tree free? What about, kenaf or bamboo or jute or hemp? I mean, there's so many different options out there. They're like, that's great. No. And so I'm like, oh,
Wow.
okay. Right. And so then of course, my first book, which I'm incredibly proud of, especially because of the illustrations by my incredible illustrator.
Mhm.
It was printed on, just regular kind of 100% tree paper. So, the second book was, dear to my heart. It was about two of my rescue dogs and their incredible, escape artist adventures. And yet again, I tried, I went out there and I looked and
Aw.
I just, I couldn't find it. And so print on demand is an opportunity where it's sustainable in the way that you only print the number of books that are bought. So there's no extra. There's nothing to toss at the end of the day because the only thing that's out there was purchased. So, it's a much more sustainable idea in that sense. And
Mhm.
so that was with my second book. And meanwhile, I had met a ton of different authors who were phenomenal and struggling writers who were really trying to get their first or their second books out there. And it was kind of one of those, sometimes we need to be the change we want to see.
Yeah.
And so I decided, I was like, if I can't find the publisher that I would want to work with, then maybe I need to become that publisher that
Yeah.
I would want to work with. And so
So
I started my little company, my little Salus, and it was with the mission from the beginning that everything that we print, everything we do is 100% recycled or tree free. And so, yep, it's our books, it's our mailers, it's our promotional materials, everything. And it's been an incredible journey, but we're trudging along. We're doing okay.
a couple questions come to mind. Where did Salus come from?
So Salus is actually it's the name of the Roman goddess of safety. It's where we get the term for solace. And, so Salus, of course, when you think of Roman myths, now
Mhm.
Salus really got kind of, I don't know, pushed in the background by some of the other, kind of myths and legends. But for quite a while, Salus, the Romans would, pray to Salus,
Yeah.
for sanctuary, for safety, for well-being, for health,
Mm.
and so when I was thinking about my little company, it was just, I was thinking not only of kind of the safety and the health and the well-being of our planet, but of my authors and of our books and of our projects. And just,
Yeah.
Salus just kind of fit. So,
Perfect.
yeah.
The second piece is that whenever you were at that position where you actually did this, I said in the beginning, you're a pioneer, and uh, maybe there is somebody else that was out trying to do this and didn't get anywhere, but you took action. You could have just been that frustrated author and just like
Right.
poo-hooed everybody and, well, this
Yeah.
is what I have to do and I'm going to do it. I'm going to just conform, but you didn't. And I love that about you, that you really decided, well, if it's not there, then, I will build it.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think, and especially I think anyone who starts a business, especially, kind of midlife, once you've already done a career, it's terrifying in many ways because there are
Mhm.
so many aspects of, oh my gosh, I
Yes.
have no idea what I'm doing. But I think what kind of gives you hope and what gives you purpose is that reminder of this is the why. Like this is the why I'm
Yeah.
doing this.
Yeah.
And then when you have that, then you start to build the team of the people who do know what you don't know. My first illustrator for my first book was is a woman by the name of Jo Gershman. And I was extremely lucky to get Jo. She had already illustrated 40 other children's books before mine. And so she was just a wealth of knowledge and expertise in working with publishers.
Mhm.
And really, she knows the quality of the work that she wants to put out there. And
Yeah.
she was not afraid to push back, and because of course, as a first time author, I was so excited to see my book in print that when they sent us like the rough drafts, I'm like, oh yeah, it's fantastic. It's great. And Jo was the one to kind of look through and it's like, okay, on this page, the spacing is off. On this page, this color needs to be brought up a little bit and this needs
Mhm.
this and this needs this. And so, and I was just amazed. It's like, oh, really? Oh yeah, okay. And
That looks
so
better.
it looks better. Who knew? And it was just, and she did. And so she taught me so much. And so she has been, she has illustrated another book for me, and she has been the layout and graphics designer for several of our other books. And she's just phenomenal. And yet again, with every one of our illustrators, it's all been a different story of how we've kind of found each other and worked with each other. And it's just every time it's learning experience for both of us. And it's phenomenal. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Several years ago, oh gosh, it's probably almost 30 years ago, my husband, a friend, a coworker of mine, retired and wrote a book about owls. And
Oh
so he
wow.
asked, and my husband is an artist and a math teacher, retired both. And so he was commissioned to do it. And he had so much fun doing it, but it is just a wonderful thing if you can have your pictures complement your words to tell the
Yeah.
story, and as a speaker and a presenter, I love that we went away from having words all over the screen to being pictures.
Yeah.
We remember words better whenever we see a great illustration. So
Absolutely.
I can appreciate what you just said, and kudos to your illustrator.
Yeah.
Have to have her on my podcast.
She's phenomenal. I highly recommend her.
Awesome. And so what are book publishers doing right now to combat or even address climate change? Because, the trees are important to help us combat climate change. And there's a great documentary all about how we should farm differently than we do today. Go back
Yeah.
to the 1800s of how they
Yeah.
did it. And so, talk to us a little bit about that.
So I think I will start off with this. I think book publishing right now is in an incredible flux. It's in a lot of shifting changes. You have it's basically it's the big five, which are in the process of becoming the big four. So you have kind of this growing consolidation or monopoly on book publishing, and these
Traditional
are
publishing.
traditional publishing, yes. And so with traditional publishing, now you basically have five corporations that own the vast majority of publishers out there. And so
Mm-hmm.
with that, there's kind of this sense of tradition. This is the way we have done it. This is the way we continue to do it. Like with any industry, right? Where it's just kind of, this is the way we've always done it. So, these are the
Mm-hmm.
contracts that we have, these are the printers that we work with. This is, the paper companies that we get, we have everything in place. We stick to what we know. And I think that is kind of the problem. I think what publishing has tried to do over the years is, let's say, anytime someone writes a book, you know, it gets picked up by a publishing house and they say, fantastic, we think this is going to be a huge hit. Well, now let's figure out how many books to print.
Mm-hmm.
Because, of course, it saves money for them to print lots
In
of books in the
bulk.
beginning,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
And then they don't have to go back to do second runs unless it's a huge hit, in which they don't care because it's a hit. So great. And so, but then it's a problem of, let's say, a publisher decides, like they run the numbers and, in this genre, this author, this has this following, 5,000 books, let's say 5,000. Or for a children's book, kind of by today's standards, a successful children's book would sell 3,000 copies. So a publisher would print 5,000 because, God forbid, yet again, they run out. All right, so now they've printed this book and they're going to send it out and they're going to do their promotion. And then most publishers really look at that first 3 to 6 months, maybe a year, where they really want to get it out there, push, 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 and try to sell as many copies as they can, because they're already thinking about the next book and the next
Mm-hmm.
book and the next book. And so then after that 3 months, that 6 months, if that book hasn't taken off with sales, they're already starting to spend less energy on it. And they're already
Mm-hmm.
starting to look like, oh, hey, it wasn't that much of a success. On to the next one, darn. And then what do they do with that remainder?
Mm-hmm.
So that remainder, typically, of course, publishers say that, books can be recycled, right? They can be pulped and made into different things. They can be, it doesn't mean that they are. Years ago, I was talking with a distributor who was, very nice. And he was talking about how, he had worked with a publisher and basically they gave him, his company, of course, 20,000 copies of a book to be distributed to a big name store. And it was with a 90-day contract. And so basically sell as many of these, 20,000 books within the 90 days as possible. Great. Well, at the end of the 90 days, I believe, if I remember right, it was around 7,000 copies were sold. So 7,000 of the 20, right? And so the publisher was like,
Wow.
well, okay, it's better than nothing. Great. And so the distributor says, all right, well, we can collect these, per contract, we'll collect these other 13,000 books. Oh, it gets worse. So we'll collect these 13,000, but oh, by the way, the big name store, they put their tags, like their little barcodes
Oh, yeah.
on every copy. Now, we can go ahead and peel those off for you, and then we can send them back to you. But of course, that'll take time. We have to charge for the time my employees will be peeling off all of these books, all these 13,000 copies. And the publisher decided, you know what, it's not worth it. Just toss them. So 13,000 books. And yet again, you hope that they were sent to a facility that recycles paper. You hope, but you don't know. So it's stuff like that I think I find frustrating about traditional publishing in many ways. I don't like how we're kind of so fast-tracked. If it's not a hit within the first year, oh well, let's talk about remainders. And for my authors, there are no remainders. Like, I will sell their titles until the end of my days and my company's days. It's not, it's not about the popularity of, the season or the time. It's, we make quality books, and quality books are quality for a long time.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the first thing. I think publishing really needs to really kind of assess the time and the commitment that they put into these titles that they are publishing.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and of course, and then it is the paper, it's,
Yeah.
I remember during my master's thesis, I was interviewing someone who worked at National Geographic and talking about what if you switched like newspapers do to 10% recycled or 20%. Think of the thousands of trees every year that could save. And he had said, well, we already have our contracts in place. And,
Yeah.
to shift that, I mean, that's a lot of work. And I think it's a lot of it is the mentality change.
Yeah.
But ultimately it comes down to customer demand. I think, once more and more people walk into a bookstore and, ask, hey, do you have any, books printed on recycled paper? Then things might change.
So a question might be, if you printed it on bamboo paper or
Right.
hemp, or what would it feel or look like? Would it be different, or would it be you wouldn't be able to tell the difference?
Excellent question. So for the longest time, that was the stigma, right? That,
Mm-hmm.
oh, if it's recycled paper, oh, it can't get that bright white color. Or if it's on bamboo, well, it's just going to fall apart on you. Or, those were kind of those stigmas for a long time. And the fact of the matter is, they're not true. It's like you compare our books to any others, and, the paper feel, the weight, everything is just as good. We've worked with two phenomenal printers, Hemlock printers, that are based in San Francisco, but they're worldwide. I mean, they
Mm-hmm.
Canada and all over. And, they have quite a few different, varieties of paper that are, just as high quality as any others, and they're 100% recycled. And the same with Indigo Ink. That's a smaller company based in New England. Phenomenal selection of recycled papers. And so it's just, they are there. It's just the consumer needing to ask for them, because
Mm-hmm.
once there's more demand, more supply will come.
Does the printing process equipment have to be different or same?
Printing is the same. So printing, there's no problem. Printing is the same. Making the paper, when you have to make it. So of course, with bamboo or, canaf, jute, hemp, all that other stuff actually requires far, far less amount of chemicals like chlorine and things like that, because they're much softer and more pliable fibers. So like for trees are, of course, they stand tall, they're rigid, supposed to stand for centuries. Incredibly strong fibers. They need to be broken down chemically to create
Yeah.
that pulp, that's pliable.
And it
And
smells terrible doing
oh, it's
it.
awful.
Oh, it's so terrible.
Oh, it's awful, right? And of course, for a long, long time, when those chemicals were done, well, gosh, we can't reuse them. So down the river they go. And so it's, the environmental impact over
Yeah.
time has been horrendous. And
Yeah.
so I think the incentive of the recycled is, it's already like the tree was already cut down and you have this perfectly good paper here. Yet again, fewer chemicals can break it back down into pulp, can make it whatever color you want, and it can live on again. And then, like I say, with, the hemp family of plants and, for trees, it's incredible how efficient it is to make paper out of them.
And
So
they're so fast growing, both bamboo
yes,
and so fast growing. Don't have
absolutely.
to have
So
centuries, you know.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's a lot of
Uh,
incentive to it.
so then, as you said, it's almost like we need a challenge or a revolution to get authors to ask for that, because
Yep.
I agree, in any change, you have to show that it's something that's needed or wanted.
Right.
And so obviously why I'm happy to have you on the podcast is to get awareness out to people to know that they could ask
Right.
that, you know. So how can authors do that in their own small way? Is it just making the ask and then hearing, no, it's not done? Or is there any kind of group that you have that, a community that is like-minded?
So I think I think that relates to very much like the theme of your podcast, right? It's that confidence in leadership. As an
Hmm.
author, anytime you're an author and anytime you have written a work that, that a publisher and an illustrator and people actually believe in, an author is in many ways a leader. And so I think an author in negotiating with a publisher, in negotiating sometimes with multiple publishers, or when they have their agent negotiate on their behalf,
Hmm.
it's putting that priority out there of, yes, why gosh, I would love to work with you. I can't wait for that, for the royalties and the signing bonus. Woohoo. But by the way, I really want this on recycled paper,
Yeah.
or at least a percentage of recycled paper. Or let's talk about what you're going to do with the remainders and let's build that into the contract. Instead
Mm.
of pulping them or, tossing them, let's talk about donating them to organizations worldwide.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I think authors, like leaders, we have far more power than we realize. And I think it is the ask. And
Mm.
it can't hurt to ask,
Yeah. All they
because
could say
then
is no.
exactly. And if they say no and you haven't signed a contract with them yet, well then, my goodness, then there are those other publishers out there like me who might say yes. And
Yeah.
it's really having that confidence and that desire to push. And I think that, can change so many things in so many ways.
So what it's a kind of a two-sided coin too. What are the manufacturers of the paper that's sustainable doing on their side to help this cause?
That is an excellent question. So for example, like Hemlock Printers, which I worked with before, they're phenomenal. They have a carbon neutral program that they're promoting,
Oh.
and it's wonderful, right? And so it's like, hey, if you want to use, any of these lines of papers, and they have different weight, different color, different all that stuff, this is this, and it will even say it on the, the back. They insist on it on the back of the book. Well, they'll say this is, carbon neutral. Like we'll plant this number of trees, to offset, the electricity that we use, or we did these things.
Mm,
So
awesome.
I think yet again, it's the incentive of the printers, to provide these things. But then of course, when they provide them, people have to buy them. People have to
Hmm.
use those programs and take advantage of those things for them to keep on, building them and continuing them, sustaining them. So it's a catch 22, right? So sometimes you kind of put things out there and then consumers realize, oh, I had no idea this was what I always wanted. Or sometimes there's the demand and then the suppliers are kind of like, oh, you did want this? Okay, I will make this for you. So it's the balancing act, right? Where
Hmm.
it's kind of, it is both increasing the demand and then encouraging that increased supply. So yeah.
So maybe you have a publisher that is okay, they really want you, and you say, I want recycled paper, and they say, well, it's too expensive.
Oh, yes. Right. Well, and that's like with anything else, right? When we think about things that deal with kind of sustainability, like hybrid cars,
Yeah.
for the longest time, oh, hybrid cars, oh, they're way too expensive. Oh, no, 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 no. They're so expensive. No, 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 we couldn't possibly. But then, of course, demand increases and demand increases. And then, of course, now we've got electric cars. And then as the demand increases, well, gosh, wouldn't you know, now you have more of a selection to choose from. And when you have more of a selection, wouldn't you know, those prices start coming down. And so it's kind of that same principle. It's that
Yeah.
same idea. And I think a lot of publishers, yes, that has been exactly the reason. It's not cost effective. Recycled paper, it costs more. It's not cost effective. That would increase the price of the book, which we'd have to push back onto the consumer, onto the reader, and then it would be too expensive. They wouldn't buy it, and then your book would fail. And gosh, we don't want that to happen. So
Yeah.
you have that kind of, catch 22. But yet again, with more options, the cost will go down.
Right.
So, and honestly, from a publisher's, standpoint, I've run the numbers many, many times. Recycled paper is not actually that much more expensive. It really isn't. It's just when you look at both and you're looking at, a print run, it's really not that, that big of a deal. Like that's a hit that a lot of publishers, especially like the big five, they can take that hit and be just fine.
Hmm.
So, hey.
So, how was it? that you got into writing kids' books?
So
I
children's
mean,
books, yeah.
yeah.
Um, that's a yeah, great question. I was writing kind of short stories and of course in journalism, so I was writing like magazine articles, newspaper articles, stuff like that. And I never envisioned myself as a children's writer. I always thought, oh, I'm going to do the novels, I'm gonna do all that. And so of course I have several novels that I'm still working on, many years later. But with children's books, honestly, I was pregnant with my son, and I remember I was sitting there on the couch one night, telling my morning sickness that it really wasn't a big deal and I can keep down dinner just fine. And I had this idea of like, what if, there could be a world where anything was possible? What if, trees could walk around and talk? What if, whales could, do races with cheetahs? Like, what if all these crazy things could happen? And what if when times get too hard in our world, like, what if you could just kind of close your eyes and think about, this place where fish can fly? Like, what if? And so it started off as just this kind of poem that I wrote. And then I also speak Spanish, and so I wrote it in Spanish as well. And then I had, of course, as an author, authors think so many of the times once you've written your story, woohoo, you're all done. And unfortunately, that's just the beginning,
Not the
because
case.
then, of course, yeah, because then it's the editing, and then it's all of it, and so then, of course, with art, it's a children's book. It's supposed to be illustrated. And so I had in my mind what I wanted, my pictures to look like, and I tried to start drawing them out. And the hand, did not connect with the mind, and my drawings were horrible. And so I realized I cannot illustrate my own book. This is not going to be possible. I need, professional help. So I found Joe. And that's the wonderful thing too, where it's just like there are so many incredible illustrators out there, so many incredible artists who just want a chance. And so, for Joe, it was just I saw her art and it resonated with my story. And so I reached out to her, and away we went. And
It's
so
history.
yeah. And then so when I wrote the first one, I thought, okay, well, but now I'm going to go back to the novels, and I'll definitely do the novels. And then of course you have a child. And so, there's that whole sleep deprivation, and then, what is downtime? Like, what, I don't know what that is because you're working. And so the second was it was an early chapter book for kids, because, I could write six chapters, I can get that done. And so, but yet again, it is the process, right? And so I think children's books are phenomenal in many ways. And I love making kids laugh, and kind of,
Yeah.
whenever I do events and stuff like that, and seeing, their surprise or their joy or their whatever, it's phenomenal. Like I did a book reading
Yeah.
in the UK a few 5 years ago now. And there's this one little boy who just, it resonated with him and he liked it.
Yeah.
And so through the website, his mom sent me a picture of like, oh, he found this key on the beach and it looks just like the key in the book. And that was huge.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Awesome. All right. Time's flown by. Let's see. I think I could do one rapid fire question.
Okay.
So, what drives you to take almost overwhelming odds on getting up when you get knocked down, but saying, someday is today, and I'm going to make this change?
I think it's an end of my life. I want to look back and know, that I gave it all. That know that it's oh, I forget who said it, but it was a phenomenal quote by a woman. She was a comedian, and it's going to drive me crazy because it's like I can't remember her name, but it was basically that. It was at the end of her days when she crosses over, it's the idea of like there is nothing left on the table. I gave it all. That was it. Like I did everything that I could. I do believe in the idea of that we regret what we didn't do. We regret
Yeah.
the fight we didn't put in. We regret giving up. And so I don't want to give up. And so, yeah.
Awesome. Well, it is time for me to share my screen of contact information for Georgia. If you enjoyed this conversation with her and you really want to be part of the change, then you want to connect with her. So if you're just listening, you know the drill. You should have run and got a paper and pencil quickly so that you can take down this contact information. It will all be on my YouTube channel, Vicki Noethling, so please subscribe if you haven't, and also on my findyourleadershipconfidence.com. The website is saluspublishing.com. That's SALUS publishing.com. Facebook is Salus Publishing with initial caps of S and P. And YouTube is at Salus Publishing 9267. And Instagram is Salus Publishing. I'm going to turn it over to Georgia now to review her call to action for you all today, telling you what's on that website that may help you as you're trying to pursue your journey as an author, or you just really want to be part of the revolution, the change that we're trying to do. And then also any social media that she spends her most time with so that you can connect with her there. So Georgia, it's all yours.
Thank you so much. So saluspublishing.com is our website where you can check out our author bios, our mission statement, basically what we've talked about with sustainability, also our contact info. So I encourage all authors to reach out to publishers, including me. And so the easiest way to do that is saluspublishing@gmail.com. I even made it easy with a Gmail account. And so, and especially I encourage taking the chance, because even if we're not the right fit as a publisher, we know other publishers and other agents who can, maybe even be a better fit. So highly encourage you to reach out. Instagram and Facebook are a great way to reach us as well. We're working on our increasing social media and all that stuff, but we have author events coming up that we're very, very excited about. And yeah, so I look forward to hearing from you.
So it has been just wonderful chatting with you this evening, afternoon or morning, whatever time it is that you're watching this, but had lovely time chatting with you. And I wish you all the best in your pioneering efforts to maybe make our world a better place. I applaud you for all this you're doing.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on.
It's been my pleasure for sure. So as always, I remind everyone that life is a journey and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.